Alrighty, welcome to the Lost Ruins of Arnak. We are going to play as expedition leaders on this uncharted island of Arnak, and we are going to try to uncover the secrets of a vanished civilization, and if we're really lucky, we might even make it to the Lost Temple of Arnak here on our research track. So as you can see, there is a lot going on this tall vertical game board. If you're the type of person who likes games with a lot of pieces and different types of components and lots of different paths to victory, this is an awesome game for that type of gameplay. The core mechanics of the game are actually pretty straightforward and simple, and that is that to take an action or to do a thing, there will always be a cost shown, and you must find a way to pay that cost to get the benefits shown, and everything in the game follows that same simple system. Before I get deeper into the actual gameplay mechanics, let's just take a quick look at how the board is laid out. There's two main things we're working on this island. One is just to go out to dig sites and find powerful artifacts that'll help us overcome the challenges on the island, while the second is this research track where we're going to be slowly committing our resources into researching the location of the Lost Temple of Arnak, which is where we'll get some big point scores at the end of the game, so that's one of our secondary goals there as well. The entire game is only 5 turns total, which we're going to mark off with this big staff at the top of the board. You can see the 5 turn markers across the way there. Each of those rounds, we're going to take turns around the circle, taking one action at a time until everybody has passed and feels that they are done taking actions for the round. At the beginning of each one of those rounds, everybody around the table is going to draw 5 cards off the top of their deck. And our starting decks are always going to be the same 6 cards. You have 2 funding cards, 2 exploration cards, and 2 fear cards. Those funding and exploration cards give you some ability to travel, as you can see in the top corner of the card, but you can also just use a free action to gain the resources shown on the front and discard those cards. When it comes to your turn in the round, you can take one main action before passing to the next player, and there's a bunch of different options for those. So the first one you can do is to go to an excavation site and dig. The main cost for going to any excavation site is just going to be a travel cost. So you can see down on the coastline here, all of the travel costs, because these are close by to where we start our base camps, they're all just going to cost walking costs. You may have access to resources in the game that'll give you that boot symbol so that you can just walk to different places, but there's also a hierarchy to travel. If you take a ship or a car, that pays for a walk cost. And in the same way, if you ever have access to a plane symbol, the plane pays for the boat or the car or any walking costs. So that's kind of the hierarchy of traveling to those different sites. As soon as you pay that cost, you're going to be able to get to that site and start digging. You just get the resources shown on that dig site, as long as it's a known dig site. If you want to spend your time and energy going further out into the island to discover more powerful artifacts and dig sites, you can do that, but it'll first cost you your action to discover one of those dig sites, and you'll have to pay these 3 compass tokens shown on that action. Once the cost is paid, you can pay the travel cost as well to choose that site, and you immediately get to take that token and start discovering while you're there. So discovering a site is super cool. We've got these piles of actual sites and guardians here. Every time you discover one, we're going to flip out the site itself, which has its own rewards and opportunity to dig, but first there will be a guardian atop it that is guarding that site that will have to be defeated before anyone can reap the benefits there. Speaking of guardians, that is the next action you can take on a turn. If you've got an archaeologist who's out on one of those dig sites, you can use your main action to defeat a guardian who is protecting that site by paying the resources shown on them there. That'll both give you access to that dig site right away, but the guardian itself will also give you a one-time boon that you can use in the future. This is, at its heart, a game about acquiring cool stuff, so some of the cool stuff you can acquire can be done with your main action as well. If you've been collecting some money through your funding cards or other means, you can spend that money as your main action to collect a new card. Maybe you'll get an axe or a chromometer or a dog to help you in your adventures, and these become a permanent part of your deck. So once you've paid the cost for that card, you're going to put it at the bottom of your deck, and at the start of our next round, you will have that card ready to go. The cards up here are divided into 2 different categories. There are the items, which there will be a bunch of available at the beginning of the game, and there are artifacts, which as we move that round meter, there will start to be more artifacts available instead of items, and the artifacts actually need to be discovered rather than purchased. So you're going to use compass tokens to buy the artifacts, and they have powerful effects of their own that will go off once when you purchase them, and then they don't go into your deck. They will sit in front of you and give you a permanent optional ability that you can use throughout the rest of the game. As we're talking about cards here, that's one other thing you can do is to play a card out of your hand. Now, we talked about the starting cards you'll have, all of which give you a fast action. That won't cost your action during a turn. But a card like the Axe, if we had purchased it and found it in our hand, can be played for a full action. This allows you to discard one of the fear cards out of your deck, which is a great thing, and also to pick up a compass token, and there's no additional cost to playing this card. Also, a great way to pick up new stuff is to do some research. You can use your action on your turn to work on some research to discover more about the island. You can see the research track here is set up in tiers, and in order to move on to the next tier of your research, you'll have to pay the costs shown on the little bridges. Now, you can only move on to a next tier space if it is connected by a bridge to the space that you're currently on. At the top of the research track is the Lost Temple, and this is one of the main goals in the game. You can see the points for getting to the Lost Temple over there are massive. The first person to the temple gets the most points for getting there, second gets the second most, and so on and so forth. Once you're at the temple, you can continue to do research while you're inside the temple by paying the costs shown below these point tablets. If you pay one of those costs, you get to pick up the 2-point tablet right above it. If you pay two of them adjacent to each other, you get to skip up to that 6-point tablet. And if you pay all 3 costs at once right there, you get to pick up an 11-point tablet for your action that turn. The research track also has rewards you'll be gathering each time you get to a new tier along the side here. And this is where we'll start to see assistants show up. An assistant is a reward for getting to certain areas on that research track, and each time you get to that reward, you can go and you can pick an assistant from those showing face up. Now, the assistants give you a permanent effect that you can use once per round. To use your assistant, you're going to have them on your campsite board, and you're going to turn them sideways to show that you've used them for this round and gain the effect shown on their token. Alright, so we're going to spend our time taking actions, taking fast actions, doing all of our excavations and research and sending our archaeologists out into those dig sites to do their work, and eventually we'll find that we're just kind of out of resources, out of cards, and ready to end the round. So that's when we'll choose to pass instead of taking our main action, and when everybody's passed, we're going to take all of the cards that we spent for the round, shuffle them up, and put them at the bottom of our deck, and then move on to the next round by drawing 5 cards and starting anew. When we reach the end of the 5th round, that means the game ends immediately and we're going to count up our score. Now, there's points to be had in just about everything in this game, but the nice part is that you are going to be able to see very readily where all of those points come from. Everything that gives you points has a purple marker right on it that tells you how many points it's worth. And I think the last really great design element in this game is how you feel resourceful at all times. There's usually a solution near at hand for how you can pull off a plan. If I find myself face to face with a temple guardian that requires me to have access to air travel and some fighting ability, I might just have an airdrop card in my hand that gives me the air travel, and if I've collected an arrowhead token, that means I'm ready to take that fight on. But if I don't just have those resources readily at hand, I might have another way that I can get to the same solution. I know that I can always pay 2 gold for a trip on an airplane, so I could spend those 2, and maybe I've got an assistant who will fight for me, but only if I pay 1 gold. So in this case, just being rich is the way to fight this guardian, rather than having the exact formula of components I needed to get into the fight myself. That is it for the base game of Lost Ruins of Arnak. Now, there are 2 additional ways you can play this game. The back side of the board has got a Snake Temple side, which basically emulates a scenario where our excavation here on the island has gone terribly, terribly wrong and no one's heard from us in some time, and you are in that mode going to play as expedition leaders who are showing up at the island after this initial expedition, trying to see what happened to us, basically, on this first expedition here. And the second is a solo variant. The game's going to introduce a automated rival that you are trying to excavate better than, and it changes up a few of the game mechanics, but makes it so that you can go out and discover and feel resourceful in a one-player game mode, in addition to all of the multiplayer game modes. So there's a whole lot to be had in this box. That about does it for this quick overview. Wasn't all that quick. Thank you for watching, and we will be back with some more of these soon.